Yeah, so one of the things that I love talking about is biohacking confidence. And it's what really that means for someone, like you, is it means really like recognizing like what's going on hormonally inside us, like in a moment like that kind of a stressful situation. Speaking is a great example of that. Is that a lot of times people, you get that nervous energy, you start to feel a little sick to your stomach, you tighten up. Yep. And if you can intentionally, manage your thoughts, and sometimes managing your thoughts doesn't work, but the relaxation you probably got in your body from just telling the truth in that moment, you probably opened up
boom,
posture.
Yeah.
And what happens is, I don't think people realize this in that moment, like what impedes your ability to take action is often that you're getting overwhelmed by your cortisol, by your stress hormones.
Yep.
When really you need a little bit more testosterone, you need a little boost in your dopamine, you probably got that love you got from the audience was probably a boost to your serotonin.
Yeah.
Right. Like a feel good.
It changed everything. And
chemical. Right.
Right. And, as humans, it's kind of amazing, with us and stress hormone and cortisol. I mean, cortisol, people don't realize cortisol is there to kind of bring you down. It's supposed to take you out of that reptilian brain response to stress, right? It's supposed to take you out of that. And that reptilian brain, when we look at that, that's where your fight, flight, freeze, all that stuff kind of kicks in. The basic life on Earth has that, right?
All survival. Keep me safe.
Yeah, I mean that's where all that stuff drives from, right? And then you have your hippocampus, and you have your emotional center, and you have what we call leopard brain, and then you have your frontal cortex, and your and all the frontal lobe stuff, which is your decision making and your problem solving and all that stuff. And that stress response for humans is so interesting because if you look at it in the animal kingdom, there's that. You're not supposed to. Cortisol can be damaging to our well-being in long term if you constantly have cortisol running through your system. And we're capable of doing that. We're the only animals on Earth that are capable of doing that. Every other animal, you think about what it's all about survival, right? You get stressed out. Right. It lasts for a period of time. Cortisol kicks in, brings you down, and then you're okay. Right. Whatever. So if you think about it like a gazelle running from a lion. Right. Oh. I mean, I hate to bring that up, but that's kind of what it is. If you want to take it down to the basic instinct, then when I talk about stress response, and I talk about this a lot when I talk about PTSD, things like that. Yes. And, what happens in that situation is the animal sees the lion, chases it. The animal gets stressed. Now, in about 30 seconds to 2 minutes, it's going to be over one way or another. The animal's going to either get away, cortisol kicks in, brings you back down. The animal's going to get caught. Well, it's over at that point too. So, I mean, either way, it's only meant to last for a short period of time. Now, think about what people do. We get cortisol level stress from being late to work. We get cortisol level stress from having a meeting that we're not prepared for. We are prepared for it. We're just
get stress from people sending us repeated messages the messages that keep coming in and feeling like you have to respond. And it's this cortisol that can rise to the level of being like a cortisol storm that's just won't go away.
And it's damaging, right? It's damaging over time. I mean, it causes all kinds of different problems for people medically. I mean, I can show you the diseases that stress causes, I mean, there's tons.
Damages your thyroid, all sorts of things.
Ulcers, ulcerative colitis. I mean, all kinds of different things could start over that, not just that, mental health issues. I mean, a whole bunch of other things can go on from that level. But it's important that, we manage that stuff and learn how to do that as humans, because like I said, we're the only ones on Earth, only animals on Earth, and we are animals, the only animals on Earth that can be stressed literally all day long.
Yeah. And it's got that like interesting interplay with mindset. When you look at that, like the stress and it's that interplay, that mind body interplay. If you're not taking care, like I always tell my clients, they go on a radical self-care plan. And the purpose of that is to manage their stress, to Make sure that their energy is solid and good, and to be paying attention to that. And how does that impact the kinds of thoughts that you have? So the more stressed you are, the more likely you are to have, for your mental game to be off. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I find that when people are having a difficulty with their mindset, everybody's like, think positive thoughts, like just, right. Like I call that bumper sticker psychology, right? Yeah. Like we'll just, like put on my mug, I'm happy, positive vibes only. That's not really, that's not life, right? Life is a lot more complex than that. And so sometimes if you find yourself where your mind is really holding you back in the moment, take a pause and go, could I do something with my body to reduce my stress? Whether and that doesn't mean you have to go run a marathon or do like a big exercise class. It could mean like, I'm going to dance a little. I'm going to go for a walk in the sunlight.
And it might be different for everybody. Yeah, it's going to be different for everyone.
Right. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take some, some meditative breathing. I'm going to do some practices like that. But sometimes dealing with your mindset really involves, getting in touch with your body and how to manage that stress too.
I think it has to. I honestly, I think it has to. I think you have to have, because everything mental is also physical, right?
That's right.
And everything physical is also mental, right? So, I talk about this a lot too, is the somatic, psychosomatic versus somatopsychic, right? You have two things going on. And people often use the term psychosomatic inappropriately. They say, oh, they're just psychosomatic and it's a sin. Doesn't mean it's not real.
Right.
Doesn't mean it's not real. Psychosomatic means that the brain is affecting the body. That's all it means.
That's right.
That's
right.
And somatos, that's why we have terms like somatopsychic, which are basically the reverse, like someone who's depressed because they have cancer. Well, that's a somatopsychic condition. They have cancer. They're depressed. It's totally normal. It's what they should be at. Psychosomatic would be someone has a mental health concern. Maybe they're stressed out of their mind. It's affecting their stomach. They can't stop vomiting, or they got ulcerative colitis. So
there's that whole connection between the brain and the
brain and the body. Yeah, the brain and the body. So everything is interconnected, and that's why we got to kind of take. Sometimes I think we need to and I stop people all the time. I'm like, look, you gotta understand what you're saying.
Right. Absolutely.
Well,
and I think that's why I've tried early on in my career. And I think this is something that a lot of us, we go all in on something. So for a lot of the time it was like, go all in on your career and everything else will be fine. And that's why I started expanding into this whole concept of, you have to include your mind and your body in this process, because it doesn't matter. I could give you any strategy at all to be successful, whatever your goal is. But if you're not managing your mind and your body, because they interplay so much together, none of it will work. It's like, why do you give someone a strategy and you give this other person a strategy and they have radically different results? Like assuming everything's the same, assuming they have the same, roughly the same resources, all that kind of stuff. If they're really close on that, why does one have radically better results? Very often that goes back to this very key point of their mind and their body. Are they taking care of their body? Are they mastering their mindset and how those work together? And when you can get that foundation right and build those skills, you really, as long as you're smart enough and capable enough to learn some things, you can put any strategy into play and achieve a lot more success than if you're just putting all your eggs in the money basket or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever your particular goal is, you have to look at the whole picture. Right. And, I get it all the time too. I get clients, sometimes they'll say, I went to 14 different treatments. I want to do things differently because, I want to do things my way this time because treatment never worked for me. And I have to kind of say, well, there's two things here.
Yeah.
There's two things here. All right. So maybe the treatments weren't right. Possible. Secondly, where were you in this?
Right.
How invested were you in the process? Because that's what you have to look at too. You can't look externally without looking internally. I've always said you have two things going on, and I'm a big person. I'm a motivational interviewing network trainer. I'm big on motivation. I look at what motivates success for people in whatever they're trying to do, right? What is the driving factor? And you have two things. You have internal motivation and external motivation. That's pretty much what you got to work with. And when you have external motivation, that's all the stuff pushing you, That's the stuff that drives you, right? That's the stuff that kind of pushes you into whatever mode you're in. It kind of reinforces the need for change, right? So if you need to change something in your life, the external motivation is what kind of pushes you into that. Maybe you got some problems at work. Maybe you got this. These are all the problems in your life that are coming forth, the consequences of whatever the old behavior was that needs to drive you to the new behavior. Well, the thing about that external motivation is that will resolve if you work on it, right? So you have to really have what we call the intrinsic or internal motivation. And that's stuff that's the pull motivation. That's the stuff that pulls you towards a goal, right? That's the stuff that if I'm trying to get somewhere, I want to get the house, the white picket fence and all that stuff. That's what I want. That's the stuff that keeps you going, right? So you have to have both to some degree.
Right.
But especially if you're looking to change things or looking to create some type of success in your life, I think the motivation is the key factor. And then keeping your mindset in the right place and just being very self-aware. And you brought up a great point before, talking to people, talking to someone else, looking at something from someone else's perspective. Like we talked about the performance coaching, and you can't read the label from inside the bottle. And I'm going to keep using that because I love that expression. I think that's great.
Use it.
I'm gonna keep using that because if you can't see it when you're in there, right? So and I always and it kind of goes with what I'm a certified clinical supervisor. I work with a lot of different therapists, and one of my biggest suggestions for a therapist is I'm not going to ask you about it, but I always suggest that they talk to somebody else. Every therapist, in my opinion, should have a therapist.
It should be a requirement. I believe anyone who's an expert, who's advising others, who's mentoring others, coaching, consulting.
Yeah, you got to have
that for yourself.
You live in someone else's crap all day long. So I mean, it's like you got to take care of yourself, and you can't help somebody else if your house is dirty, right? If you're not.
I always say that one of my superpowers is I can see other people's blind spots that other people can't even see, and I can see them. And part of that is like the lawyer. This my journey from lawyer to entrepreneur. I've owned a number of businesses. I can see a lot of things other people can't see. But I have blind spots too. Everybody does. You don't escape the blind spots. And the only tactic for dealing with a blind spot is getting somebody else who can get that bigger view. And so it's really, really necessary that if you want to perform at the highest levels, if you want to have someone who can help you see how to get motivated too, because like motivation is sometimes you won't feel motivated. Well, then you have to generate it. And some of that generating motivation is the kick in the pants you get from the person who can see what you can't see.
Sometimes, I work out every day, almost every day. And unless I am told to not, and there's a lot of days I don't want to do it. I get up, I'm like today, for example, I'm totally dreading my workout today, but the fact is I'm going to go do it. And how do I get that motivation to go do it? Well, sometimes it's just as simple as walking into the garage and doing it, or walking into the gym. Right. And sometimes it's like I need a little more. So I'll put on like some videos of other people working out or something like that, or something like that. And that gets me kind of like in the mode to do it. What sets you up? And you bring up a great point with the blind spots. And there's actually a whole therapeutic concept around that. It's called Johari window. I don't know if you're familiar with the Johari window, but it's a 4-quadrant box. And, one is something, about you. It's all about you, right? So the first quadrant is, here's what I know about me that nobody else knows.
Right.
Here's what other people know about me that I don't know. Right. And here's the shared experience that we're going to find out together. And then here's the unknown. So what you're going to have is here's what we both know. Yeah. Here's what we both know, right? We both know, for example, I'm wearing a purple shirt, right? We both know you're wearing a purple shirt too. So, or pink. I think it's purple, right? I don't know. I might.
No, close enough.
I might be colorblind. So we both know that about each other, right? But I could have something, if I wasn't looking in a camera and we were talking to each other face to face, what if I had something on my face? You know it. I don't. Right? And it's up to you to tell me for me to fix that, right? And then there's things, I know about me that you don't know, right? So you take those three quadrants, and the object of Johari window is to take those three quadrants and move them into the unknown quadrant, which is shared experience, which is we both figure it out together.
Right.
And that's the whole concept behind Johari window, which I think is a great, it helps in coaching, it helps in therapy, it helps in a lot of different ways, because, it's about taking those things and making that shared experience and putting it into that, making the unknown quadrant known.
It's a beautiful description of how transformation can happen.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think
so let's say when you look at that, if you're only doing it by yourself, if you're one of those people who's like, I'm going to take care of this all by myself. And this works in therapy. People do this all the time. They know they need to make a change, and I'm going to work on it all by myself, and that's it.
Yep.
You might be able to do it. There's books, there's stuff, there's YouTube, there's Google, right? But it will probably take you a lot longer. And it will also leave a lot of gaps because of that stuff you can't possibly see yourself.
Yeah. Like I said, I walk around all day with that food or whatever it is on my face that you see that I don't, right? If no one told me about it. Right. So that's the point I often make with clients who tell me, yeah, I'm going to do this by myself. And I'm like, yeah, well, you might be able to. And I always ask this question, you may be right. You may be able to, let's say an alcoholic, you may be able to stop drinking on your own and not drink again and all that stuff and have a great life. You may be able to. What if you're wrong?
Right. What are the consequences if you're wrong?
What happens if you're wrong? And that's, I think, really important to kind of get is like, you may have your own ideas, but explore everything. And then understand if you're going to try to work things out on your own without talking to somebody else or using a coach or using some type of external
support.
Support source, whatever, you want to call it. What are the consequences for that action if it doesn't go right?
Right.
And that's something I think people need to think about.
Right. And for some of them, the consequences could be really dire and serious. And depending upon how you think about it too, for these people who, they're already people who are successful in some way, the consequences are getting to the end and going, oh, you know what, I could have done more, having that regret about what was possible and I missed it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the consequences could be all over the board, and maybe they're no big deal. Maybe sometimes the consequences are no big deal and you're saying, hey, I'm going to roll the dice here. But for an alcoholic or somebody like that who has a serious issue they need to deal with, the consequence could be losing my family, my job, having legal problems, getting a DUI. I mean, there could be 100 consequences that are terrible. So it depends on what those, you have to think about that. What are the consequences for trying this on my own? Or for a therapist who doesn't have a therapist, it might be, I burn out after a couple years in therapy, in working.
Right. That's one of the worries for me. I take on a lot, it's a little bit different, but I take on a lot of people's problems. And that's what I'm doing. I'm talking to people about their problem. Yes, their hopes and their dreams and helping them get where they want to go, but also there's also anyone who's dealing with helping solve other people's problems. You run the risk that you yourself will burn out. And even, so many people are just working so hard in general. If you're not getting some clearer picture on maybe how they could do things better, more efficiently, they run the risk of burning themselves out when they don't know how to properly manage their stress, or even someone who's really just not. They think that they can. A lot of people do this too with nutrition, and
they try to do
that too. They think that they can watch some things, or they're getting advice, and they're like, "Oh, this person, I'm watching them on YouTube, and it's really helpful." And it might be helpful for a lot of people, but maybe it's not going to be helpful for you.
We're all different, right?
Right.
That's why, and that's become very big in healthcare today. And I want to kind of, we got to start wrapping up in a few minutes, I think. But, in healthcare today, we just have these great conversations. So this could probably go on for a long time. So
we'll do it again.
We'll definitely do
it. Myself back.
But in healthcare today, no, I definitely want to have you back on. In healthcare today, you see this giant push to client-centered therapy, client-centered treatment, client-centered, focused, they're calling it. I mean, everybody calls it something different. Every hospital wants to have their own twist on it, whatever. It's client-centered therapy or client-centered treatment, whatever. But, client-focused is the recognition that one size does not fit all. and we have to treat everybody with what, and I always say, you have to look at client willingness. What are they willing to do? What are they appropriate for? And what, another thing is it's really important these days is how's it getting paid for? What's happening? Who's paying for it?
Sure.
Where's the money coming from to support whatever option you're going with? And that's true in healthcare, mental health, everywhere. Those are the three real things that you have to look at. And, really important that they're looking at it as that perspective. Because it used to be very cookie cutter for years and years and years. It was like, this is what you have. This is what we're going to do. And it didn't work for a lot of people because, hey, humans, we're all different. We're all going to respond differently. We all have different chemical makeups in our body. We have different genetics. We have different brains. We have different ways of thinking. We have different motivation. We have different compliance. I mean, sometimes you're not going to be compliant with something. Well, I'm not going to do that if you're not going to be compliant with it.
Right.
We got to do something else.
Right. It won't work. It doesn't matter if it worked for somebody else if it's not going to work for you.
Exactly.
We got to find something that will work because that's a big killer to motivation when you're not seeing progress. So,
and that's true for coaching too. I mean, coaching and all the stuff that you're doing with mental performance, it's like, what's going to work for this person? And I think it's great. I think we have a long way to go in every aspect of that. But I think we're getting better, and I think we're learning from all our past mistakes and learning from how, what we've done, and learning from our successes too. But I think, across the board, whether it's coaching or therapy or medical treatment, whatever it is, I think we're on a path. So hopefully it'll all get better. But so real quick in closing, because I know we got to wrap things up, and I know you got to go because I'm sure you're pushing up against other appointments and things.
I am.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
No, we're good.
I apologize. But so where can people find you? Tell, real quick, and then we'll move on.
Yes, they can find me on my website. It's boldfireinstitute.com. You can also find me on Instagram, jengrosso.co. I use my personal one a lot more often than I use the business one. So find me there. I'm also on LinkedIn as Jen Grosso. You can find me there as well. And I have programs I have programs at various price points. You can work with me one-on-one. People can work with me in groups. And I also have smaller, quicker workshops and things that we offer on a regular basis. So
and you're always out there speaking. So I always see you out there doing your thing and talking the talk and that's good to see. Absolutely. So yeah, Jen, you're an inspiration. I'm happy that you're a friend and a colleague and somebody that I can talk to, hey, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Guys, check out Jen Grosso and, we'll do this again.
That sounds great. Thank you. And good luck with the show. This is going to be amazing. I'm excited.
I'm excited about it too.